I hope you can see me over this podium. Mike, I want to thank you for inviting me to come over the hill to be in your marvelous Coastside community today. I am Julie Lithcott-Hames. I'm on the Palo Alto City Council. And Pacifica and Coastside Dems, thank you, for being so active, so connected, so concerned, so hopeful and optimistic about what we Democrats can do. I moved here to the Bay Area as a 17-year-old from the great state of Wisconsin and never looked back. I decided the Bay is the Ellis Island of America, a refuge from the people and places we might have been from elsewhere in America. Any of you transplants to the Bay, or did you all grow up here? Okay, right, a lot of us have chosen this place despite the cost of living and other challenges of being here. There is no place more magnificent than the California coast. You don't need me to tell you that, but I'm saying it anyway because sometimes we take for granted our greatest treasures when they're right in front of us. So it is a joy on a Saturday morning for me to travel up 280 to come to your beautiful community, and thank you for having me. I'm here because I am a proud member of the North Star Progressive Slate to our state convention. Your very own Robbie Bancroft is on the slate. Give him the slate. Give Robbie a round of applause. Aisha Barrow down in Half Moon Bay is on the slate. And I have learned, yes, let's applaud Aisha. I have learned so much from those two and our other slate members. It has been such a learning opportunity to be in conversation with my fellow Democrats on behalf of Marc Berman's Assembly District. So I'm not new to political service. I actually represented this district at the 2008 Democratic Convention for Barack Obama. I was an elected delegate for Obama in 2008. Do you remember the hope and change that were promised and that in many measures came? I know what it is like to be, it was Denver, that 2008 DNC, and to walk into that convention and stand there under the sign that said California, to have chosen this place to root myself and my family, having lived in Wisconsin and New York and Virginia and Massachusetts, to stand under this post with the California delegation, which was of course the largest in the place. I was continually in tears of pride and hope. And what an honor, a privilege also, to represent a set of people at a convention, at a national convention. And now, as I said, I serve on the Palo Alto City Council, where I get to work with our former mayor, Lydia, on the issues that are dear to our hearts in Palo Alto. At the convention with Robbie and Aisha and the others, we got to contribute to the conversation about what we as Democrats do in this challenging American moment. Issues like climate, healthcare, health insurance, reproductive justice, housing, hate and divisiveness, education, equity, and the sheer health of our democracy. It is so lovely to be in conversation with thousands of Democrats where you know that you have a shared set of values, you may have a different way of getting to the outcomes, but what a joy it was to be at that convention this November. Locally here, I know you're dealing with things like land use, the Rockaway Quarry, what's going to happen, how do we remain respectful of the past and respectful of various issues of what that land was while thinking about the future, and how can we be loyal to the future and create something that Mike's getting a phone call from somebody important. It's Marc Berman. Somebody heard I was talking about the quarry and was like, wait a minute, we didn't know she was going to do that. I know you're concerned about flooding. See, and Mike told me to fill time until Berman gets here. I mean, not until, no, I'm joking. I know, I'm wrapping up. But I was told that a certain assembly member was a little late. So, okay, I know you're concerned about flooding. I know that there are places here that rise as much as 6 feet in the rainy season. I know that's terrifying. I know your infrastructure has not been paid attention to for way too long. And I know we have to protect against what is already happening and prepare for a safer future. I know we're going to need to focus on greater density in how we live in order to respond to the changes in climate. I also know that education here on the coast side, you're not as well resourced as you should be. And here I'm talking to you from Palo Alto, one of the top school districts in America. And we just, we spend more there. And I don't think a kid's quality of education should have to do with the financial base of the community. We got a lot of problems. Okay. That's why I was an American Studies major at Stanford back in the 80s, starting to focus on these deep inequities that America has perpetuated. So I thank you for the opportunity to just be here today. I'm going to listen and learn. Not being a Coast Sider, I don't presume to know the depth of the issues that concern you, but I do care. I'll be back next month when the congressional candidates are here, because I am, in fact, a candidate for Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I apologize for the phone call, but it was a 916 call, and I thought, well, maybe it's Marc Berman, right? Because 916 is Sacramento. But it was some sales call. It's like, you can't beat them off with a stick, you know? I mean, in there. Okay, so the next speaker will be Bridget Hart, and she is the chairwoman of the Yes on Measure G campaign, which is a bond measure going before the Pacifica voters March 5th, okay, for work with the schools and staff housing. So I'm just going to turn the floor over to her, and if you can pay attention, we're probably going to do a vote afterwards to see if the Pacifica Democrats would endorse the bond measure. So, and please be nice. This is a mom whose first time doing a political campaign, okay? So, yeah, she deserves a round of applause for stepping up and doing it, okay, you know? So anyhow, okay, Bridget.
Thanks, Mike. Sure, that'd be great. Yeah, you can just tap the screen. You can just tap the screen. It should go to the next one. Pacifica schools are over 50 years old. Not that any work has been done since then, but not as much as we need. Let's see. So about 5 years ago, there was another measure, Measure O, and at that time, the district, with the help of community members, parents, and teachers, created a master plan. Measure O covered most of phase 1 of that plan, and now we'd like to move on to phase 2 with Measure G. There's really good momentum right now, and a lot of the work on that plan is relevant, and the longer we wait, the less relevant that plan will become. Oh, you can go. Some of the things this bond will cover are, for all schools, for the rooms that don't already have it, getting flexible furniture, continuing to build collaborative classrooms and outdoor learning environments, resurfacing pavements, and replacing portables into modular buildings. When the state is determining how much money a school will get, they don't take into consideration how old the buildings are or any infrastructure work that needs to be done. They rely on communities to do bond measures. They also don't take into consideration ADA compliance, technological advancements, or improving standards. Only with bonds can we do work on these buildings. Next slide. Part of the money from this bond is going to be used to keep the workforce housing prices low for our educators and staff. I think that there's a teacher crisis in the nation, and it's difficult to find teachers right now. And Jefferson School District built some teacher housing, and now there are no positions available at that school. I think Pacifica can do that too. The teacher turnover is so high in our community. We're one of the lowest paying districts, and if we have somewhere affordable for our teachers to live, I think we can really change that. Strict accountability. So there is going to, there's a citizens oversight committee made up of volunteers that do annual audits for all the money spent with this measure. They post online publicly the work that's been done. You can look on Pacifica School District's website right now and see all of the results from Measure O. This ensures funds are spent as promised. Money from these bonds cannot be used for any salaries and cannot be taken by the state. That's it. Yes. Do you have any, Mike, do you want to add anything? No pressure.
Yeah. Applause for the novice, okay? You have to respect anybody that gets in the blood sport of Pacifica politics, okay? Because that's what the over the hill called Pacifica politics. Do you want to say?
I just want to reiterate about that. The money that comes in from this measure isn't going to go towards any of the building of workforce housing. It's to keep the rates low for teachers. All that money's coming in with loans. So.
It's coming with it is staff housing, and just to kind of.
I can add something to that also. Along those lines, and then Daly City Council is meeting Monday night to approve a final phase of the Ceremony Doble housing. It's where the old Ceremony High School. Any and all community input is valued. It would be necessary to get that, to see that project to fruition.
I just wanted to say is that, as you all know, I was on the school board 14 years, and the climate here is really rough on facilities. And I was told that up at Sunset Ridge, the multi-purpose room is in really, really bad shape to the point that it might have to be cut off from public use. It's not usable now at this point. So do we want to be a community that has part of a school condemned as unsafe for your kids? Is that what you personally want? And what is that if you want to sell your house? That the community thinks so little of its kids that it lets schoolhouse rot. Okay, I was on the school board in 1998 when we passed the 1997 bond, okay? And we were fortunate we had an empty school building, so we physically moved the kids out because kindergartners were distracted by big trucks and stuff, right? And the teachers are distracted by big trucks too. But anyhow, all right? You know, and we did a total guts. I mean, we replaced the plumbing, the electrical, we remodeled to the technology of the times, and that was the conduits run through the building so that you could run wires for computers in every classroom, because we remodeled before Wi-Fi, okay? These buildings were built when your kitchens that you bought a house in Linamar were avocado green or harvest gold, okay? How many of you still have an avocado green or harvest gold stove in your kitchen? None of you. Yeah, you know, I mean, so you got to sit there and think, is that what you want your kids going to school, your teachers teaching? Because what's going to happen, if the facilities aren't competitive and safe, but other districts in the county are looking, Palo Alto School District is looking at building staff housing, or is actually turned to shovel. Cabrillo school district in Half Moon Bay is going for a housing bond measure for staff in November. Daly City Jefferson Elementary School is opening up their teacher housing probably spring of next year. The high school district already has it currently open, and I think there's a couple other districts looking at that proposal. We will not be competitive in salaries if we do not give them some. There was teachers that had signed contracts with another district, but when they were offered the housing at Jefferson, they broke the contract and came to Jefferson High School District because of the housing, okay? You're talking for a studio apartment in this area, the Bay Area, is anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Starting pay for a teacher in the Pacifica School District is roughly $50,000. Okay, you're talking about someone that probably has a student loan. Okay, God, you're 20-something years old. Do you just want to sit in some dingy apartment your entire life? Or do you want to go out and have some fun, meet people, and be a 20-year-old? Okay, and just to show you the discrepancies, no offense to our Palo Alto neighbors, but the highest funded school, elementary school district in San Mateo County is Woodside. $28,000 per student. Pacifica's funding is $10,800 per student. Now, how can you take and attract teachers with a salary discrepancy of $20,000 to $30,000 a year? They start here for 2 years, and they go to the next district after they get experience where they can make 20 grand a year more. Who wouldn't do that? Okay? So that is something that needs to be dealt with, okay? I guess you can imagine how I'm going to vote, okay? Okay, and I have, 4 other registered voters in my house, and I fill out all their ballots, okay? So that's at least 4. Yeah, but they sign them, okay? So anyhow, can we have a motion to support the bond measure? No. Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody against? All right, didn't think you'd do that. Okay, okay, so I will notify the people to have the Pacifica Democrats listed as an endorser for the school bond measure. And now we come to the moment you have all been waiting for. And it's 5 minutes for when Marc Berman's ETA is supposed to be here. Elise? Yeah, I was going to have that. Okay, so anyhow, here's Lydia Koo, correct? Koo, yes. She's a candidate for the Assembly District that Marc Berman currently presents, and I'll let her give her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. I want to say thank you so much to the Pacific Coastside Democratic Party for inviting me here today and giving me the opportunity to speak. But I also heard that it's also the Pacifica Daly City Democratic Club, so I'm a little bit confused. So, okay, so it's Pacifica Daly City. So thank you for inviting me, and it's just Pacifica. Thank you. Just Pacifica. Again, thank you. So, good morning. I am Lydia Koo, and it's spelled K-O-U, because I know there's been different versions out there. Former mayor of Palo Alto. I'm still a council member. I'm into my 2nd term as a city council member in Palo Alto. I'm finishing up end of this year. I feel that when I'm running for city council or for any elected position, that I do finish my term before jumping into another candidacy and for another office. So I am running for state assembly to put an end to status quo politics and work for the people of District 23 and California. As you know, Assembly District, a lot of the laws that are put forward affects the entire state. And I really feel that each of our communities, each of our cities here in California is unique. They have their own different characteristics. People live in those communities and chose those communities and invested in those communities for a reason. And so to come up with one-size-fits-all laws for the entire state of California is wrong. It does not take the people's input. Sacramento has become the home of big donors, special interests, and career politicians. We are taxed to the hilt, yet we face seemingly insurmountable problems in housing, homelessness, transportation, and infrastructure. You just talked about affordability, coming up with ways in order to ensure affordability for your teachers and for all the workers here in Pacifica, along the coast, throughout the state. It's actually throughout the state. We're constantly talking about how do we get affordability for people who live here. Well, the cost of living has just skyrocketed. I mean, it's really, really high. And there's a lot of people that are leaving the state because they can't afford to live here anymore. But a lot of the laws that are put forward from Sacramento actually increases our cost of living, increases housing values, and it just, every time we upzone a property, every time we do that, we just increased another property's values. And that property that we had upzoned has also increased in price. So we're always playing catch up. And a lot of the developers that are building the housing are not building housing that are affordable. It's luxury. Yes, there is inclusionary housing included in some of that, but by state, it's only 10%. We're never going to complete building affordable housing if this is the way we're going to go, because when a developer produces these affordable housing in their market rate development, those are only, they're not in perpetual, it's not forever. It's not in the deed, thank you. It's not perpetual. It's only negotiated to be about 35 years or 55 years, all depends on their negotiations. And in time, within 35 years or 55 years, those affordable units, the really genuine ones that are deeded below market rate, they're going to change to, deeded below market, they're going to change to market. So affordable housing consistently disappears, and we're always, as elected officials and as the community, rushing to figure out a way how to get more affordable housing. So we really need to think about this very carefully when we have state top-down laws that are coming into communities and really benefiting special interest, their campaign donors, and also their colleagues that are sitting with them in Sacramento. And so I am a Democrat, and it might seem crazy that I'm challenging the incumbent here, but I think that we need to shake it up. The politicians now, it's very hard because I really don't think that they have, their heart is, I don't think they have their interest in us, people here in boots on the ground in the communities. And now a lot of them are working for big donors, special interests. Just look at the donations, right? And also political party masters. So as mayor, as the former mayor of Palo Alto, as well as council member, I see firsthand all the broken promises. We're at the city level, we're listening to our constituents. It's very hard to represent them when our voices have been taken away. We don't even get heard. We have gone up to Sacramento, asked them to listen and to look at the analysis, the pros and cons of all the laws that they've put forward, but continued to be ignored. So I think sending me to Sacramento will be a wake-up call for career politicians who have lost touch with the people of California. And changing the status quo that isn't delivering for our communities starts with changing the culture of sending the same people to Sacramento again and again. So if you agree, I'd love that you join my campaign. Thank you.
And Marc? Okay. Okay, and Marc Berman is here. And Marc, when it's not your turn to talk, you can sit in the chair there. I'll go stand over there. And then this is basically just opening remarks to state your position, who you are, and your background, et cetera.
About how much time should I have? About 5 minutes. Perfect. Good morning, everybody. First of all, go Niners. Sorry I'm late. A bunch of Niners gear. I love it. Sorry I'm late. I was actually just this morning in San Jose speaking to a bunch of neighborhood associations. The district goes from Pacifica, it's massive, from Pacifica in the northwest all the way down to Campbell, Saratoga, San Jose in the south. But it's fun. I love the diversity of the district and getting into all the communities to chat with folks and hear about what they're concerned about. And the concerns differ a lot across the district. I'm Marc Berman. I'm the Assembly member for the 23rd Assembly District. Before that, like Councilmember Koo, I served on the Palo Alto City Council for 4 years. I see Julie Lithcott-Hames. I think y'all had a chance to hear from her. I'm not endorsing in the congressional race, but I think incredibly highly of Julie. She was actually my Woman of the Year in then AD 24 in 2022, I think it was. So good to see her here, and good to see Jennifer DiBrienza from the Palo Alto Unified School Board. Proud to have their support in my campaign. I've served in the Assembly for 7 years, and during that time I've gotten over 90 bills signed into law. I don't know if that's the most successful or one of the most successful kind of ratios of getting bills signed into law by the governor over the past 7 years. And I struggle from being interested in a lot of different issues, and so those bills cover a lot of different issues, but I just want to focus on 2 of them real quick in the intro, and then happy to take any Q&A that folks have. First, I've been leading the effort in the California State Legislature in defending our democracy. I got elected to the California Assembly the same night Donald Trump became president of the United States. Yeah, imagine that victory party. And my sister-in-law went home crying. And when I got elected, when I got sworn into the Assembly, the Speaker of the Assembly appointed me chair of the Elections Committee. And that was at a time where we saw things that Donald Trump had done and saw things that foreign actors had done to try to help him get elected. And I realized the remarkable responsibility that I had with others. And so I've authored almost 20 bills in the election space defending our democracy. I'm sure y'all have heard of a couple of them. A few years ago, I authored the law to make California a permanent vote-by-mail state. So every active registered voter in California, you get a ballot in the mail. I also authored the law to create the Where's My Ballot tracking system. Who signed up for the Where's My Ballot tracking system? Good. If you haven't, I encourage you to do it. It allows you to track your ballot in the mail like an Amazon package. And that's a convenience for you as a voter, but my hope, and I think it's happening, is that also increases transparency in our election system. And I hope that that increases voters' faith in our voting systems. At a time when people all across the country are trying to erode your faith in your democracy, we're taking steps in California to make sure that you know that you have the most accessible but also the most secure voting system in the country. But I also authored a couple of pieces of landmark legislation you probably have never heard of. I authored the bill in 2018 to create the first state Office of Elections Cybersecurity. So California was the first, and it might still be the only state in the country to have its own Office of Election Cybersecurity, because our elections are run by all 58 counties across the state, and some, like San Mateo County, have a lot of resources and a great system, but we have a lot of smaller counties across the state that don't necessarily know best practices to make sure to implement to keep their voting systems secure. Who here is worried about AI? Artificial intelligence. You heard a lot about artificial intelligence. Folks have some concerns. Maybe some folks haven't heard about it yet. I wrote the first law in the country in 2019 to regulate the use of artificial intelligence, at that point deepfake technology, in elections. And it regulate the ability of people to disseminate AI. Because, and we had to narrowly craft the bill out of First Amendment concerns. In my mind, the First Amendment says that you can say what you want. The First Amendment does not give you the right to put your words in my mouth. And that's what this technology can do. This technology can take an elected official who's giving a speech and totally change what they say to give voters an impression that they said or did something they didn't say or do. That law has been followed by states all across the country. I'm proud of that, and we're actually going to double down on that and do even more as AI technology has become more pervasive. Another thing that I've really focused on is higher education, and I know time's going to be up in 45 seconds, but 30 seconds. But I created a select committee on higher education to identify what the obstacles are to our youth getting through community college, transferring to four-year schools at the UC and CSU level, and being successful. Because unfortunately, the reality is our transfer rates in California are terribly low. And I'm proud to have led efforts and gotten Legislator of the Year from the UC Student Association, got Legislator of the Year from the CSU Student Association for the work that I've done to improve their ability to get a higher education, improve their lot in life, and most importantly, improve their kids and their future grandkids' lots in life. I'll talk a lot more about that with Q&A. I'm honored to represent you. Thank you for the opportunity to come and chat with you all.
Okay, at this point, I just have a couple sample questions so we can get started because sometimes people are bashful in the beginning, although I know this is Pacifica. So I will just ask a couple questions and then we'll open it up. And I ask if Lydia and Marc can each keep their response to the questions down to a minute so we can, and then we'll allocate some time at the end for them each to have a closing statement, okay? And Connie was very happy to loan me a quarter to do flip coin to see who goes first. We'll alternate, okay. Okay, let's see. Lydia, heads or tails? Heads. Heads won, so you go first. And then then 1 minute with Lydia, and then Marc gets to respond for 1 minute, and then we go to the next question. Okay, one of the big concerns in California as a whole, and especially in larger cities, is Proposition 47. And Proposition 47 is the voter initiative that that raised felonies up to 1,000 and has led to a lot of the retail crime in terms of gangs coming in. What would you do, and what's your thoughts on Prop 47? Lydia?
Prop 47 definitely needs to be reformed. Increasing the amount. Thanks, Dave. So Prop 47 definitely needs to be reformed with the amount up to 950 for as a misdemeanor. I think that we're not holding and. It's not just one crime. They can continue to do it over and over again. For a mom and pop owner, it actually is very, very, it's very harmful for them because they're gonna, if one person comes in and robs for 950, another one comes in again, then they're going to be losing out on over $2,000, and it can continue on. And meanwhile, this criminal is just slapped on the wrist and let go. So there's no rehabilitation, there's no consequences for them. It sends a message of over and over doing it again, and they're allowed to do it. Now, mental health for the police officers, you have to think about what are their mental health. It's built in their DNA to provide safety. And without it, then... Sorry.
No, don't be. I don't know how you answer this question in 60 seconds. But I'll try. So I think we need to enforce the laws that we have on our books, and that's where I agree with Governor Gavin Newsom. I think the question is, if somebody steals $800 in jeans, do you think they should go to state prison for 3 years or county jail for 1 year? And I personally think they should go to county jail for 1 year for $800 of going into a Macy's and stealing clothing. But I think we need to enforce the laws that we have and make it so that folks understand that if they violate the law, there will be consequences, they will be prosecuted, and they will go to county jail for up to a year. And so we currently, it's $950 in California. Guess what the threshold is in Texas? Let me ask you, $200? $2,500. In Texas, a tough on crime state, the threshold for a property crime to be a felony is $2,500. So I don't know that we should go, when we were $400, we were the second lowest in the entire country. At $950, we're the 10th lowest in the entire country. We need to enforce our laws.
Okay. Listening to the candidates, I guess we need to go to 2 minutes, okay? This is my first forum, all right? Being on this side of the podium. Okay, this is this is the last question I'll ask, and then we'll open it up. Lydia is running on a campaign of shaking up Sacramento. Lydia is going on a campaign of let's shake up Sacramento. So I want to ask Lydia, by shaking up, what would you do? And then Marc, do you agree with Lydia that Sacramento needs shaking up? So I guess we'll go with Marc first, just to alternate between candidates. So 2 minutes.
As my colleagues know, there are a lot of times where I literally want to shake them. So I think it's always good to have new ideas. I think it's always good to evaluate what we're doing and determine whether or not it's working for folks. What I hear about the most from my constituents, and frankly polls and research bears this out, is that my constituents are struggling under the remarkably high cost of living in this area. That's what I hear from the most. And there's actually a huge disparity. Folks who have bought homes, and especially folks who have bought homes decades ago, are not feeling that pain. But folks that are either trying to move here now, or actually, I should take that back. The folks that bought homes decades ago are feeling that pain. You know why? Because their adult kids are moving back into the house. And so that is the area that I hear about the most where people are struggling. I know Jefferson Union High School District, and Andy Lai is here. He just gave me a tour of the teacher housing project that they've got. And I know that there's a bond measure on the ballot. I was proud to endorse that bond measure. They're doing amazing work. But you know why they have to do that? You know why they have to build teacher housing? Because the cost of living is so high that teacher salaries make it impossible for them to recruit and retain teachers. When people talk about cost of living, what I think about is my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Perry. When I went to Jordan Middle School, it's now called Green. Mr. Perry was a wrestler from Stanford. I paid attention to no teacher in middle school except Mr. Perry. I was a little bit of a brat. But Mr. Perry had the ability to keep us in line. He and his wife moved to Portland in the early 1990s because the cost of living was so high in Palo Alto. Hasn't gotten better. Jennifer DiBrienza, my friend who's on the Palo Alto Unified School District, how's the student age population in Palo Alto doing? Huge decline. You know why they're on a huge decline for the student age population in Palo Alto? Because younger people who are having kids can't afford to move into the area. That is what I hear about when I hear about cost of living. It's the inability of teachers to live near where they work, to come in early in the morning, to stay late and help their students. So those are some of the improvements that I've been working on that I think are really impacting the quality of our life in our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Assemblymember Berman. Mark, I just want to say that, you know, when I say that Sacramento has now become the home of big donors, special interest, and career politicians, it's very true. Former Menlo Park Mayor Ray Mueller had written an opinion piece in the Palo Alto Daily Post, and what he called legislation that has come from Sacramento that is top-down, a misguided precedent setting centralization of power in the state that weakens the foundation of local representative government and devalues the voices of its electorates. So let me ask, Mr. Marc had put forward a legislation that brings you absentee ballots to your homes, but at the same time, at the legislature, he would put laws forward like SB 10, which actually allows a city council to say on one parcel you can increase the amount of housing especially in our single-family neighborhoods. A city council could say that you could put up, the property owner could put 10 units on that parcel. And also, in addition to that, that if a city council by its majority can say that a referendum is over, there is a referendum by the people and it is passed by the people, a city council majority can overturn it. So now you kind of have to think, what happens to the quarry?
Okay, I'll see what the hands feel is. If someone makes a remark, do you want to give the other candidate 30 seconds to respond? Yes? Raise hands, please. I'm hearing mixed. Okay, so yes. Marc has requested 30 seconds, and then we'll also give Lydia 30 questions. You know, if she 30 things. You go first.
So Lydia mentioned Supervisor Mueller. I'm very proud and honored to have Ray's endorsement in my campaign for re-election to the California State Assembly. She also cited SB 10. SB 10 is actually the height of local control. SB 10 was a state law that says if a city wants to do something, the city can choose to do that thing. Local control was literally written in to SB 10, and that was why I supported it.
So that's telling me to be quiet. Okay. Okay, questions from the audience? Yeah.
All right, in regards to both, I think everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
In regards to school and education funding,
I mean, I'm proud that we're in a state where over half of the budget goes to education and health and human services. In a state where we are, what is it, the fourth economy in the world? Yeah. It's embarrassing that every time our schools need money, they come to us, the property owners. As long as I've owned property in the state of California, there has not been something on there that's asking for additional money on my already exorbitant property tax, which I happily pay, especially to education. But what I've heard from neither of you, tax code reform, especially with the corporations, property owners, and this new thing about additional dwelling units, those people should be paying property taxes as well as the property tax owner. I guess my question being is, how do we get more revenue into the education system and to pay the teachers, San Diego to Crescent City, out to Tahoe, top tier?
Okay, Lydia, you're next, and then you'll have a 30-second response after Marc speaks.
You know, Palo Alto has a really good school system. We use the basic aid, I think over here is as well. But we do need to focus on ensuring tax reform. The state government has a lot of waste where they subsidize a lot of things, and I think that there's a lot of ways that we need to look at reviewing whether the amount of money that the state provides different programs are actually working or not. So I do believe that there needs to be an audit in some of these programs that we're seeing that the state is funding, but also to focus that the youth from the lower grades, they need to make sure that those primary school is the main focus. I know there's the higher education that a lot of people talk about, but if we don't give children the foundation of good education, then they won't go any further. But the focus, we have to remain looking at focusing that the youth are funded consistently and that the funding is going to remain there. And if you ask about affordability again, I'm going to say state laws that take away local control, local land use and zoning. Oftentimes when they upzone a property, it increases the prices. And so we're back to looking at how do we provide affordable housing for our teachers, which I have to say, when I was growing up, the teachers mean the world to me because they are who I am today.
Thank you. So we have a terribly volatile tax system in California, a revenue system in California, and we're seeing it today, where all of a sudden, you know, there's a massive budget. We had huge budget surpluses a couple of years ago, and now we have massive budget deficits. And so I think, and we're starting to talk about this more seriously amongst colleagues around tax reform, because you can't do tax reform when you have big surpluses. We've had big surpluses my first 7 years in the Assembly. Now is a good time to really revisit that and have those conversations. One thing that I did support that I was frustrated to see was not successful at the ballot was split roll when it came to reforming Prop 13. And split roll leaves residential property alone, but it would increase the valuation of commercial property. Chevron is getting $1 billion surplus every year, or excuse me, $1 billion tax break every year from the state of California. Disney down in Southern California is getting a more than $1 billion tax break from the state of California. That's money that could be going to teachers. That's money that could be going to students. That's money that should be going to our K through 14 education system. So I think that that's an area that we need to revisit, and I think it's a good idea to revisit that when the budget is worse, because that's when folks realize, that's when all of a sudden we have to start talking about possibly cutting programs. We in the Assembly, at least in the Assembly Democratic Caucus, are hell-bent on protecting the improvements that we've made over the past 7 years. And so we're not interested in rolling back on the progress that we've made. We know we've gone from terrible for per pupil spending to mediocre for per pupil spending. We want to get to good for per pupil spending, but I refuse to go back to terrible, which is where we were when I entered the Assembly, and where we've been for far too long. So I think things like split roll are a good way to increase billions of dollars in revenue for education every year, and then continue to look at ways where maybe our tax system is not necessarily meeting the needs of our communities.
Oh, no, no rebuttal. It's depressing.
Yeah.
And you know, actually, he's right. There is need for relooking at split roll as well as looking at. So I agree with Mark.
So, Dan? And please, if everybody, no monologues and stories, just ask a question. Thank you.
Pacifica has two neighborhoods that flood like clockwork every year. Sharp Park here has a falling apart seawall, and Lindemar has a sewage pump house that burned down and wasn't replaced for 4 years. This has been going on since got no new infrastructure. At best, we've got replacement infrastructure. You've got a ton of new RENA housing here, coming here. How can we make sure that we get seen by electeds more than once a year, that we aren't just ignored as the farthest outpost from the center of Palo Alto, et cetera? Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Dan. And I assume you all know that you see me a lot more than once a year. So we had a good time. Now, it is January 19th, so this is the first time you're seeing me this year. But this was one of the first community, when I've represented Pacifica for a year, now a year and 18 days. But we made sure that Pacifica was where we had one of our first community coffees that we had last year. That was one of the best attended community coffees we've had. It was also one of the most, there was more candor in that room than there has been in a lot of community coffees that I've had. The first thing I ever did in public service was get appointed to the Infrastructure Blue Ribbon Commission in Palo Alto back in 2010. A bunch of citizens who weren't elected to anything, and we gathered together to evaluate the city's infrastructure assets, figure out where we'd fallen behind, come up with a plan to keep up with the maintenance that was necessary, and come up with the funding to get ahead in funding 2 new fire stations, a new public safety building, other needs. You've got my commitment to help Pacifica do, I know you've emailed us. I think maybe I'll have a meeting with you coming up soon. I think you've chatted with my field rep, Elise, who she's not here in an official capacity. This is on the campaign side. But if I can get funding for Pacifica for critical infrastructure needs, I will work to do that. This year is not that year. We have a $40 billion budget deficit, and we've been informed pretty clearly that we're not going to have money for district projects. But I'm going to be, voters willing, I'm going to be here for another 5 years. And now is the time for you to inform me of what those problems are, for me to figure out there might be the ability to get existing funding from existing pots of funding. So I fully understand how important infrastructure is to a community. That's what I first did in Palo Alto, and then I used that to platform to get onto the Palo Alto City Council. I understand the impact that has on a community, and you've got my commitment that we'll show up every week if we have to learn more and to help get it fixed.
Remember, every week. Every week. So I started in coming from the community. So I was a volunteer in my neighborhood for emergency preparedness, took the program, implemented the program, fostered the program, and now it's a city endorsed program. I'm very much boots on the ground, so you will see me here often throughout my community, throughout the district, if I'm lucky enough to get into that position. Infrastructure, a lot of what Marc had put forward in the infrastructure task force that identify where we need to pay attention at, I implemented a lot of those, found the funding, and actually saw it through. So gone through the EIR. But also a lot of the infrastructure that we did were also new. So you have, one of the things that I hear a lot is the sewage flooding and with sewage that comes out into neighborhoods. That's a health matter. It should be top and foremost to be identified. So if one of the things that we need to identify what our health matters and attack that right away and take care of it. So throughout the communities, I think that there's going to be a lot of talking with the community, finding out what is their infrastructure needs, especially when it has health and safety implications. Thank you.
Mark, did you want 30 seconds? Okay, so we'll go back to Chris Redfield. And let's see, Lydia's first. Oh, actually, Chris is first.
Thank you both for coming. I'd like to know what would be your position politically, and what would you do regarding coastal armoring and protections for vulnerable private assets and public assets in Pacifica? This time just go Berman, which is literally right here. We could hit it with a rock. And the seawall, which is just a few hundred yards from here. Those are critical issues right now, and I'd like to know what your legislative position would be on that.
Lydia?
So if the armory is it historical? Yeah. So Sue had taken me to see the Sam's Castle, and that is a treasure also with the history behind it. You know, I'm very much about historic conservation and making sure that our history is retained, but it also needs to be taught. So it's one thing to have the historical site there, but it needs to be preserved, and it also needs to be spread and make sure that there's tours to it and it brings in some funding in order to continue to maintain them. But I do think that there is education component that needs to be aligned with it. And I would very much want to see if there's a way to get a seed money to start it first through the state and have preservation there. But your other matter was about the seawall. I think that's something that is another top priority with sea level rise and the climate change. You know, we kind of need to look at whether it's seawalls or jetties or groans that needs to be implemented along the coast in order to contain all of the different ways the waves are coming in and how the seashore is attacked by Mother Nature.
Thank you. So earlier I mentioned if I could hit the reset button on our tax system, I would. As you know, a lot of those, a lot of the property along the coast is regulated and governed by the California Coastal Commission. If I could hit the reset button on the Coastal Commission, not to eliminate it, but to have learned what we know now. If we knew that then, we'd have probably done things a lot differently. And so I think we're constantly having conversations in the legislature around how we can make sure that state agencies that kind of treat themselves as autonomous from the legislature, how we can assert our authority when we feel like they're either exceeding their authority or just whether or not their authority needs to change. I've been working with a group of homeowners, my office has been working with a group of homeowners in Half Moon Bay. You might have read about them in the news recently, who are trying to get approval to build a seawall to protect their community, similar to a seawall that was built just down the road to protect public property. And let me first say, y'all have you have an amazing city council. Your city council, first of all, they are so collaborative, and I know there are a bunch of city council members and mayors here today, and former mayors here today. She just left. But we can either kind of scream at windmills when it comes to the California Coastal Commission, or you can try to work with them and educate them on the community in Pacifica and the local needs in Pacifica and make sure that they understand the impacts and get the local voice that your current council is generating for you. So I hear your frustration. I appreciate your frustration on a lot of things. I probably agree with your frustration. We've got the system we've got. I want to find ways, to improve the system, but also just to make sure that those leaders isn't the right term, those folks in Sacramento with the Coastal Commission and others understand exactly what this means to Pacifica and the damage that this will have for the future of Pacifica if you don't get the protection you need.
Lydia, do you need a 30-second rebuttal? Well, okay, all right. Yeah, unfortunately, I think all three candidates for this assembly will be here. Marc, Lydia, and Gus. And Gus was not able to be a forum member today, but we've been asked by Kevin this morning to kind of leave here post haste because he's got another event coming up. So, pardon? Oh, the other event is waiting to get in here. So thank you. Next month is our candidate forum for Congress. And I want to thank both Lydia and Marc for coming today. Oh, and on May, and please leave a tip at the table for floor. And in May, we are having the sitting Coastal Commission member for San Mateo County will be the speaker, Justin Cummings. So he will be here May 16th or 18th or 20th, whatever it is. Thanks.